Okay, let's see. Now I should not be muted anymore. Although I still can't hear me, which may or may not be good. Oh, now I can hear something. Interesting. There's like 20 seconds or more delay between what I do and what I don't do. Hello, everybody. I hope you can see me as well. Let me know in the chat if anyone is actually watching. Anyways, it seems I have at least found a way to do sprints in the morning again. Let's keep this one until I actually get the OBS thing going. So it seems why it didn't work yesterday was in fact up to some ineffable YouTube restream issue and not something I did wrong, because I did the same thing today that I did yesterday and now it works. So here we go. Yeah, not much else I can say right now, but I guess here we are. I'll just do the same thing I always do, which means, you know, anyway, I am back and I will do the same thing as usual, which means like 15 minutes rambling, or like 10 minutes now, I guess. And then I'll do some working through like emails, social media, whatever stuff, and then like actual novel writing afterwards. I should not call it a novel until I've actually finished the thing, right? So, yeah, not much else to say at this point. Hope everyone has had a good weekend. I mean, I still assume that no one's there, but you know. Mostly, I'm just glad that I figured out how to do this streaming thing, at least for now. I'm not exactly happy using like the Restream IO thing either, but you know, it's what we have for now, and I'll figure out how to do the what's it called? Get the OBS thing figured out in the coming days. But you know, what can you do? Sweet. Thank you, Kitty. I do appreciate that. I guess I'm back then. And good luck with work. I hope it's not as exhausting as it was yesterday. I'll just drink some tea and then do something, I guess. All right. Yeah, that's the beauty of being here alone by, you know, starting way too late. So maybe I'll just start the sprinting early if no one's here yet, and see if anyone shows up later on. We will see. Maybe gives me some time to be more active or get an earlier bus. Who knows? It's one of those like weird things when you do like the sprints in the morning and there's no one acting and you're like just talking to the void, which is, I guess, totally fine when I talk to myself when I'm, I don't know, under the shower or whatever. But once there's a camera, I'm like, oh God, someone is maybe watching and listening and just not reacting, which feels weirder. Yeah. Thanks, Kitty. I do appreciate that. Yeah. Now that's an interesting thing. Can I edit the description of this video stream while it's running? Or should I not try? Because this sounds like a recipe for disaster. See, Kitty, that's the fun thing. I feel like I like even when there was like classroom teaching, sometimes you have that same thing, right? You talk and then you have like 20 students sitting there and you ask a question and no one is willing to raise their hands. You just like stare at them and they stare at you. It's a don't teach difficult philosophy classes is what I'm saying here. But yeah, the void is dangerous, I think. We should all be aware of it. But yeah, I guess I'll buckle up and get down to reading leftover emails, leftover YouTube comments, trying to figure out how to reply to YouTube comments on my phone, which sucks so much. It's so weird. Like when I start my computer, the first comment I open on YouTube, if I open YouTube the first thing in the morning, and then I can reply to the first comment in my browser. When I start to reply to the second one, it doesn't work anymore. It's so ridiculously weird. Bye, Kitty. Okay. Now that's good to know that it works. So I'm happy about that. All right. I mean, I guess I'll start the sprints now and I'll be back at 9-ish and then we'll talk. Hopefully someone else has turned up by then. Who knows? Otherwise I'll just like ramble at the void some more. I'm good at that. After, hey, Asa, welcome. I'm glad to find you here. I'm sorry you're sick. I hope you get better soon. And what are you reading? I am going to do some productivity in the morning at this moment. But I'll start reading The Sunken Land Begins to Rise Again, and I'm incredibly excited about it. I finished, what's it called? Elantris yesterday, and I've wanted to read that one, like Sunken Land, because it's, M. John Harrison, whom I really appreciate, and it's a book about Brexit, sort of. And that sounds like something I might enjoy, and I need something interesting between all the Brandon Sanderson stuff. And I'm finally back with the sprints after tech technical issues yesterday. I don't know what went wrong, but at least it's working today. Also, yeah, I realized there's like a massive delay between me saying something and you hearing it. I realized when I switched on the audio of the stream on YouTube for a second, and it's like 15, 20 seconds before something comes across, which is so weird because then there's another like delay between something written in chat and showing up in the chat representation on Restream. So it feels like talking to like astronauts, or I'm the astronaut somewhere out in space, and you guys are on Earth, and we have these long communication delays, which good sci-fi novels and movies kind of mention, and the rest kind of ignores. Oh yeah, right. You're still in Perhaps the Stars. It's such a good book. I love it so much. It's especially the way it then like the whole series is brilliant. I absolutely love the whole series. Obviously, I'm like target audience number one for this, with like starting a PhD in 17th and 18th century philosophy of religion and that kind of stuff. So I'm very much an Enlightenment philosophy. So I'm very much the target audience. But I love how the story kind of, or the big sort of like themes slowly shift over time, and you realize somewhere in Perhaps the Stars, at some point you realize what it is actually about and what it is not about, and it's why the whole war is happening, and like the idea of like what is mankind's future? Is it turning inside, trying to understand ourselves and never leaving this place, or is it actually about getting out there and expanding humanity or restricting humanity? And I think that's like a really, really interesting concept in general, and the way she handles that is just like incredibly impressive to me. Really, really, really love that. I've been pushing that book. I was pushing that book away from me for ages, and I know my old flatmate read it like the first one and was sort of conflicted on it, and which doesn't mean that put me off. It was more like I knew about it forever, and I'm like, yeah, I should probably read this, and then it kind of got pushed ahead, and then at least at, earlier this year, I kind of got the just decided to take the plunge and finally read it, and was like, wow, this is exactly my thing. I really should reread it and do some videos on it, because there's not that much content on Terra Ignota on YouTube. I think. I mean, there is some older stuff, and I guess with that background that I have in like some Enlightenment philosophy and history of philosophy kind of stuff, I could probably add some sort of context that might be interesting for people struggling with the book, because there's a lot of people try the books and go like, I don't get the references, I don't understand what this is all about. So maybe I could do some good. Not that I'm a teacher, but the urge is sometimes there. All right, let's actually do that. Let's do some reading and stuff for the next 45 minutes, and then I'll be back and we'll talk some more and have fun with that. All right, and I am back, I hope. And I see some people have found their way here. Hey, Britton, good morning. Oh, I mean, good evening to you, or late evening, I guess. Yes, I have gotten Restream to work for now. It does have a monstrous lag compared to StreamYard, though. It takes like 20, 30 seconds at least until what I say comes out to you. And then, so it's a bit slow today. I don't know where the issue lies. I'll still play around with OBS and see if I can, get OBS to work. That one is just slightly more difficult to figure out because I have to do, I have to ask a friend to help me with like placing the scenes and say, oh, on. So I'll wait for my flatmate to come back from work and stuff later today, and then maybe I'll do like a quick test stream to see if that works. And if it works better, then Restream. And if, in the long run, I want to switch to OBS. That would be perfect, but it is what it is. Hello, Nexi. I obviously didn't see your message because you removed it, but anyway, how are you doing? How's things over there? And I mean, obviously, glad you finished Moon Witch, Spider King, the other way around. God, confuses me. Yeah, Moon Witch, Spider King. Yeah, I still hope that the final book comes out next year, because if, then of course I'll read it. I thought it was supposed to be out this year, but I guess delays are sort of one thing you have to kind of do when you do epic fantasy. So yeah, I did in fact manage to do some writing, reply to some comments, do the usual thing that I try to do during the first sprints, read emails, catch up to like whatever else I had to do. Yeah, exactly, Burton. I too want to see how the third book will be, but so far, I don't think there has been like an official release date or anything, a publication date announced, as far as I know. Certainly hasn't shown up in like any pre-order lists that I have seen, so I guess we still have to wait until whenever. But then again, I mean, I still have enough to read right now, so I'm fine waiting until like next year at some point. After all, there's all this Sanderson that I have to get through. And of course, I have to prepare the Christmas thing, and still haven't gotten around to that. I am very partial to just going ahead and doing Left Behind this year. Although that might just piss off a lot of people. Or annoy people, or, entertain people. I don't know. I guess I don't know enough like evangelical Christians to know how they will react if I go and talk about their, I don't know if it's their favorite, but like one of their biggest sellers when it comes to sort of fiction. Yeah, the Christian ones. That's exactly the ones that I thought about. Because there's 13 of them, just like the 13 Drizzt books I read last year for Drizztmas. And there's certainly interesting stuff in there from what I can tell when it comes to talking about them. There's certainly lots of weird religion stuff. I have read essays on them in like my research for like the general like millenarium stuff and conspiracy stuff that I was working on earlier this year. So I already have some background in that regard. So it would be fairly easy to do that. And I guess there's enough to talk about there, because the problem with like more Drizzt books would be that I don't think there will be much new stuff happening with Drizzt in the remaining 26 so far novels to make new points beyond like, hey, this is still sexist and somewhat racist and homophobic or whatever. So I don't see there. I don't see necessarily if there's enough, interesting stuff going on there. Yeah, I definitely think there's enough interesting and fun stuff in there to sort of map that on specific ideas about the millennium and showcase how they are not necessarily actually part of the Bible, but very idiosyncratic interpretations of Bible adjacent material, I guess. So that, and that's kind of, I mean, that's sort of like the idea of that whole like Christmas thing. If I want to do it with like different books, the idea would be to pick books that are interesting, somewhat outside of what I usually talk about, because they might be frustrating to read. They don't they don't have to be just bad, because obviously there's like just bad books. I can probably just read a bunch of Dragonlance and probably be annoyed by those as well. But from my memory, they're not as egregious when it comes to stuff as the Drizzt books, but they're just like plain boring in a lot of ways. So and exactly, and that's like what I kind of try to sort of get to, which I think would be interesting with those Left Behind books. The alternative would be once again what Janine mentioned or suggested, which would be Karl May, which is a German writer from the 19th century who wrote adventure novels. Probably arguably one of the most influential German writers for whatever you might call, yeah, just like generally publicly read authors for a long time. It's like I have a lot of books. I've read a bunch of them as a kid, which were all handed down from my father and my grandfathers at least, and um, so he wrote books set in the Old West in the 19th century, and he wrote books set in mostly what is now the Ottoman Empire. So you basically get westerns and Lawrence of Arabia written by a German, very much a German scam artist in the 19th century, and Karl May himself is a really funny guy to talk about. He was, as I said, like a scam artist. He, for the longest time, claimed that like these books are like basically based on his travels in the West, which they obviously weren't, because he never went there until he was like incredibly successful and so forth. So weird guy, and you can talk about the image of the, or like the way the Old West and certainly the Orient, there's a lot of Orientalism going on there as well, like the specific forms of like turning those areas into mythology in a very specific, like late 19th century German perspective. So there's, and how that then influenced obviously Germans. And famously, Adolf Hitler was a huge fan of Karl May and did in fact send boxes of novels, of Karl May novels, to his generals on the Eastern Front, which may or may not have improved German chances there. Hey, Kat, how you doing? Yeah, I think like the one thing that is really annoying here is the lag or delay or whatever it is with the latency between Restream and YouTube is much longer. I like half a minute at least. Anyway, so yeah, the Karl May one might also be interesting in that regard, because there's also something to talk about, shifting our perspective, learning something about how myth making works in a lot of ways, like modern myth making works, and there's a lot of like noble savage tropes in the Karl May Western stuff, and also like proto-German romanticism, or like you can't necessarily call it nationalism, but certainly myth making about a German identity is going on there as well. So it would be interesting to talk about that, and just pick a, like, I don't know, pick 5 or 6 Western books and pick 5 or 6 of the Orientalist ones, and maybe 1 or 2 that are sort of fully outside of that, because he wrote like a couple of books that are not part of either the Western stuff or the Orientalist shit, and talk about that kind of stuff. I think that might be also interesting, just for like an international audience in particular, because I don't know how many people know about those kind of books, but as I said, they were like a huge influence, or had like an absolute staple in like Germany at least. And they made movies out of them in like the 70s, which are really interesting as well. In particular, because they filmed those movies in at the time, well, in what is now former Yugoslavia, because obviously you needed some area to film something that looks Western. And turns out that Yugoslavia does have like the Balkans do have a lot of like interesting, like, you know, landscape to use for that Western film. So there's a whole lot of like very specific German stuff to be talked about there, and I just don't know how long that would be interesting to an international audience, because I mean I guess they are available in English. I mean, I sure hope so, but I'm not sure how easily available they are. I mean, obviously they're super old, so if there's like older translations, they should be available for free. Of course, I mean, like whenever you write something sort of historical or whatever, you always mythologize. That's just like how it is. Like even if I would write like a historical fiction about Germany, I would mythologize. That's what writing fiction is. It's a form of mythologizing. We just like separate it in some ways. I would separate it because mythologizing should have or does have sort of like deeper underlying concepts about how the world works that are not necessarily as successful with fiction writing unless a lot of people engage in it. And I would definitely say that there is a form of mythologizing going on with, let's say, the Old West, and certainly with has always gone on with you know, Asia, different parts of Asia, and obviously Africa as well. Yeah, so not every piece of fiction is mythology, but every piece of fiction has the possibility to become mythology, is how I would probably phrase it. See, the interesting thing with the Black Forest in Germany is that that is all external mythologizing. Most Germans don't think that much about the Black Forest. I mean, obviously, it's a holiday destination, like where a lot of people go for like quick holidays because Germany is not that large. But beyond that, it's not that big a thing. But like internationally, especially like in the English-speaking part of the world, it's like Germany is Lederhosen and Black Forest, and those are not necessarily the same place, because you know the Lederhosen are more like a parts of Bavaria, but only parts of Bavaria, and then obviously parts of Austria. They're more like an alpine thing than anything else. And the Black Forest is much more like much further west, I guess, is what you would call it. It's closer to Switzerland than anything else. But yeah, so my plan was probably to do like a poll thing on the community tab, if YouTube allows me to do one, because my browser still my browser and screen reader are still very much wrestling with YouTube at the moment, and maybe put up the Karl May thing and Left Behind, and there's still the idea of using what's it called, Perry Roden, but that might also be really painful. So maybe I'll pick those three and let people decide, and maybe add the Drizzt one again, and if people really want me to read more, like 13 more Drizzt books. I just think the other ones are more interesting and might, you know, be entertaining, because they'll certainly be painful to read, and I'll certainly be how can I put this? I'll certainly be somewhat agitated about them, I'm sure. But there might also be something, you know, interesting to learn for people, or even people that have read those books before, something to, you know, confront a lot of, like, I guess, childhood nostalgia in a lot of ways, because I assume that well, I know for sure that with the Karl May stuff, it's definitely something that was written that mostly people read as kids or young adults, I guess. And I assume with Left Behind, it's similarly more like something that you've read as a younger person and have either like fond memories, because, you know, we always have like nostalgia for what we read as kids, or you know, so there might be something in there to sort of like go back and confront or wrestle or engage with our like preconceptions or memories in a lot of ways. And I think that's sort of what I find interesting about it. And that's kind of why I did the Drizzt thing last year, was also to sort of look back at like what I read as a kid and go like, what was in there? Um, there might be gingerbread houses out there, but they are not set in the not necessarily set in the Black Forest, right? One interesting thing about the Grimm's fairy tales world, obviously there's like all kinds of different collections of fairy tales all over Europe, but the Brothers Grimm were mostly around where I live, in Hesse, which is it's further north, and parts of Lower Saxony. They mostly worked at for a long time at Göttingen University and at Kassel University, which are both north from here, and then I think Erfurt or Jena, which is further east. But most of their collecting of stories were done between Kassel and Frankfurt and Hanau, which is exactly where I live. Like Hanau and Frankfurt are like an hour away from here by train, and both of them lived in Marburg, where I live, for a while as well. So this is not Black Forest stories, although you probably have similar stories there. Not that there wasn't, enough forest around here as well to get lost in. It could be wrong. I still have owls waking me up at night if I have a window open in summer. But a lot of those stories are more like closer, I guess, to something like the Harz Mountains and the forests around there than they are necessarily to the Black Forest part. It's difficult to explain. You have these different parts, or linguistically different parts in Germany. You have the Alemannic language or dialect part, which is the southeast, which is closer to like Swiss German. And then you have what is now called the lower German dialects, which are further to the north and to the east. And a lot of the more like fairy tale stuff is more connected to the lower German accent, to the eastern part as well, which is now parts of Thuringia and Saxony, and probably moves even into parts that are in, Bohemia and Silesia, which used to, are now part of the Czech Republic, and some even part of like Poland and so forth. But the images people connect with Germany are usually southern German, southwestern German parts like Black Forest and Lederhosen, whereas the stories connected with that are usually further situated, come from like further north and east, which is interesting. So yeah, I'm gonna go for the next round of what we might call sprinting there, and see if I can engage in some actual myth making myself by writing some more. Now, wouldn't that be cool? And maybe I'll also try to set up that poll on the community tab. Who knows? Anyways, I'll see you in, I don't know, 10 for my time, so in 45 minutes. And we'll see how things go until then. And I am back. I almost missed the clock because of writing. Hey, Kale, how you doing? Yeah, I almost missed the time because I started actually writing and trying to figure out words and stuff, which, it's kind of the plan, but it's still not always easy. I did in fact manage to write some words, not enough, but as I said, this is a difficult part to figure out because it's all about, I guess, insecurity and writing characters that are writing about something that is slightly, it's both much emotional, but also at the same time, the characters are obviously, at least one character is very much self-aware, or self-conscious, and insecure, and that is obviously something that is difficult to do when you're like me and very and struggle with the, acknowledging your own insecurities from time to time. So it's kind of difficult, but slowly proceeding. Also, I mean, how late or how early or late is it for you, Kale, out there on the other end of the planet? I mean, you're probably like 12 hours time difference, something like that, right? Probably more. I don't know. Time is weird. So yeah, I hope you did get some stuff done, or just delete or whatever else happened during your last 45 minutes. Also tried to do some more research on the whole Karl May issue, because I wanted to make sure that those books exist in English before I set up any poll asking you about those interests. Turns out they're really popular in Japan and China. Weird. But then maybe not. Yeah, all right. I really hope I can get this whole like lag delay kind of thing fixed, because right now it is very much like like I'm an astronaut trying to communicate with Earth and having to wait for minutes to see anything. But it is what it is. What can you do? At least it's working somehow. And so yeah, I'll probably just like end this now ish, and I will set up sprints for tomorrow morning. So maybe like I'll try to set them up later today. So ideally, more people know about it up from tomorrow on, and we can have the same thing we had last week. Which, I mean, just having like the interruption of like Friday and Monday kind of felt like almost losing that streak of like a routine. And I feel like routine is sort of like partly the goal here. So that's how I feel about this. Anyway, thanks everyone for actually showing up on such short notice, and I hope to see some of you tomorrow. And I hope the tech stuff will work tomorrow as well, because of course this still remains all very much uncertain, like the future in general. So yeah, thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you tomorrow. Oh, interesting.